All right. Good afternoon, listeners. You're listening to Lament of Hope blog and podcast, and I'm here today with Alejandro Monteverde. He's the director of several films. Most recently, the ones that'll probably stick out are Sound of Freedom and Cabrini, but he also directed Bella, I think back in 2006, which is a very it's a film that prizes life. It's a very good film. I'd highly encourage watching it if you haven't yet. But his most recent ones, again, Sound of Freedom and Cabrini, both of which are very good. Um, Alejandro, before we start, you're drinking beer on the
Mhm.
on the show. Can you explain to people? You said that you had a long day and that you're in Morocco right now, about to
Yeah,
shoot a film.
yeah, I'm in Morocco and over here is almost 7 o'clock and I just came from the desert. Um, we're about to start shooting a film and I'm in the middle of nowhere. Very, very hot over here. It's gonna get to 125 degrees.
Wow.
So and I just arrived. Um, and when you're making a movie, it's all about, trying to prevent. It's problem solving, but you want to solve the problems before they become a problem.
Yeah.
And it becomes really intense. But, movies are made by humans. So you just got to know that there will be a lot of mistakes through the journey, but you want to foresee as many mistakes to be ready for them. And that's
Yeah.
what we call pre production. So I'm in pre production right now, and and I have the jet lag, and I just arrived to the hotel. I haven't unpacked. Um, So I'm like a gypsy right now. I just literally
It's
I I left I left LA on Wednesday and it's Saturday, and I don't know what happened to the other 2 or 3 days because
well,
this
I'm
is my first night sleeping here. So I think I lost a day flying here,
yeah.
and then there's I'm in the middle of the desert. Then I had to drive for 5 hours to here, and then I got here and it was directly to work. So.
Well, I'm
Um,
sorry. You have to tell your assistant he has to add some nap time in your schedule.
Well, my assistant doesn't start until Wednesday. So right now, my other assistant, he's in the US.
Oh,
So I will have an assistant here on location, but she doesn't start until Wednesday. So
I'm
right now
sorry. I
I'm
feel
I'm in the
bad.
jungle by myself.
Well,
Yeah.
uh, you know,
And I'm
I'll
sitting on the floor. I'm sitting on the floor because I just moved into this hotel and it's very dark. So I had to put the computer next to a window. Um, because I have another Zoom after this one, and I still haven't figured out. So I'm sitting on the floor with the computer in a chair.
Well, you know what? Then this is really leads to a good question. Why do you want to do it? Why do you want to make these kind of films if it sounds like all of these processes are so stressful, which obviously they are, but you're making films very quickly, a lot of different films. What's your drive
Well,
behind the film?
yeah, yeah. Well, it seems quickly. This movie, I've been working on it for 12 years. So this is a 12-year
Oh, wow.
project. So,
Okay.
and this is the most important film I will ever make. I'm pursuing mastery. This is my masterpiece, this movie. And
Hmm.
after this movie, I want to make great films. Obviously, I don't want to lower the bar, but I don't have, you know, what it requires when you have to have the desire to do a masterpiece because if the piece that you create and it asks everything out of you and
Yeah.
it's really exhausting uh, creatively and mentally and physically. And this is it for me, this movie. After this movie, I'm not going to take 12 years to make a movie. So this particular film, to answer your question, I am doing, for me, one of the most important films in the history of cinema. I'm doing the life I'm telling the story of the life of Mary, mother of Jeshua.
Wow.
And,
Okay.
historically, we started counting time through her. So today's 2024 because we started counting time on we could say on the birth of her son.
Hmm.
So it is a spiritual thriller. It is a spiritual thriller, but I'm shooting it in a way that it's very complex. It's all choreographed. It's a big dance, and everybody needs to be in perfect rhythm.
Yeah.
Every department. So a lot of design. There's for those that are not very familiar with filmmaking, when you shoot a movie, you do what we call coverage. You cover the scene different angles. In this one, I'm not doing any of that. It's all one continuing
Okay.
dance.
So it's gonna seem like one scene that doesn't end.
It's gonna seem, yeah, it's gonna feel like one scene that doesn't end, and where we go from day to night, where we
Hmm.
do passage of times without edits. So it's a collaboration between human and the divine power, I will say. You have, if I don't think it if and I'm just going to use the word universe. If the universe does not collaborate with us, this movie won't be possible. We need the sun to be. The sun it's actually one of the main characters on the film, literally the sun. So
Hmm.
it's a very challenging film, shooting in very difficult, weather.
Yeah,
100
sure.
degrees, 120 degrees is in the desert. Um, but the greater the challenge, the greater the glory.
Well, why are your films focused so much on, first of all, spiritual aspects, as well as human life and the value of human life? That seems to be a theme of a lot of your movies. Is there a
Yeah.
reason for that?
I, yeah, yeah. I think I think it's unconsciously. I am, I, 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 I have a lot of existential questions
Hmm.
that I like to explore through my work, and I think unconsciously I, get uh, attracted to stories that explore anything that has to do with a choice. I do believe that we live in a world where you can live according to your ego, or you can live according to your soul. And many different people call it different things, the false self or the true self. And I don't want to bore you with this, but it's just universal language. The false self is the persona that we create so we
Yeah.
can exist on a world that is driven by other people's egos. So we automatically start building this persona to be able to survive with the persona that the other person built, which is their ego. And then all of the sudden you find yourself living on this egotistic driven world,
Yeah.
where a lot of insecurities start to kind of dictate your life, and you don't know why you're making choices anymore. If it's because this is something you want to do, or if it's something the world is expecting for you to do, so you can belong in that particular society. And I like to make movies that explore that constant decision. Are you gonna serve your weakness? Are you gonna serve your purpose? Are you gonna serve your ego? Or are you gonna serve the calling of your soul, of who you
Yeah.
truly are? Because we definitely are not that voice in our heads. We know that. Because if we were the voice in our head, we wouldn't be able to listen to it. So who is the one in our heads always talking and opinionating and judging everything, especially judging our own selves? It's very destructive. If you start listening to your thoughts, if you think about it, they're not, for the most part, they're very negative. At least
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah, then that's
And I
true.
always attempt, at least I attempt to always say, okay, I want to disempower that. And how do you disempower that? Is by different practices. For my case, it's through meditation and prayer. but I also like to explore thematically on movies. If I read a
Yeah.
screenplay or a story of somebody that had to make very, very life-changing choices, or a movie that defeats the ego, which is a movie of a character that wants to live for others. That makes, in our world, it's
Yeah.
always about me, 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 me. But if all of a sudden I meet somebody that is like wants to literally live for others and really is connected to the pain of others, then I'm like, oh, I like that character. And normally that's how these stories end up in my hands. I don't look for them. It's gonna sound like a cliche, but I feel they find me because I'm really interested, because I want to do that. I don't do that, by the way. I would love to do that. I would love to live a life for others. But I do like to make movies that proposes that question: Can we? Are we wired? Can we achieve that? Can we be selfless and not just look after ourselves, but look after the well-being of others? And yes, that is all the films. That's Bella. Here you have a guy quitting his job to go and help somebody.
Yeah.
Then we have Little Boy, which is the same thing. It's a little boy who's trying to help people because he thinks by helping people he's going to get his father back. And then we have Son of Freedom, a guy who left everything to go rescue children. Then Cabrini, which is the same thing, always worry for the social justice of the immigrants, but also of those living on the streets and the
Yeah.
ones that have lost their dignity. And then I'm doing Mary, which is a woman that it's she has to fight the ultimate darkness in order to bring some kind of hope, or the ultimate hope, to mankind. So yes, there is a pattern, but I didn't choose it consciously.
Yeah.
I can see the pattern looking back,
Yeah.
but it's not the pattern that I went out and I decided to do it that way. It just unconsciously, I look back and I do see that I try to practice, and I do a lot of bad decisions in my life, and I know I associate them with my ego and my mind. And the few good decisions that I do in my life, I associate them with my soul. So
Yeah.
I at least I want to do movies that help me to explore that path, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. But I was going to ask you because you mentioned that Mary brings the ultimate hope. So I'm guessing you're talking about Jesus, who she,
Mm-hmm.
for you, Jesus, for instance, Christians will say Jesus is what saves us from our egos, from our sins. He's the one who can, he's the only one who can help us to do good things. Um, like for you, as you're exploring a biblical story, do you see it as, okay, mankind needs a savior so that we can do good things? Or do you think that man, apart from God, is able to do good things on their own?
Well, there is a there's a way of looking at this. God is love, God is good. So anybody that does good and anybody that practice true love, I do feel it's part of that spiritual journey that Jesus preached and lived.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do feel like what's happening is that we have become a society that everybody has their own interpretation of what love is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when we get lost, because if we start changing the definition of what love is or what a spiritual life is, then there's 20,000 ways, 20,000 definitions, and you can
Yeah,
get a little bit lost. I have a lot of questions. I don't have the answers. I like to make movies that propose questions, that proposes themes
I see.
for
Okay.
people to reflect. Everybody has their own journey. I am never gonna attempt to. I don't like to make movies that are preachy, because I don't like to preach. I like to propose a theme to create a conversation
Yeah.
and meaningful conversations. Uh, I I surround myself with people that have complete different belief systems and believe complete different ideologies than mine,
Yeah.
and I'm very attracted to surround myself with people that think differently than me. I don't surround myself with people that necessarily believe what I believe. I would say a good 80 or 90% of my very close friends have a complete different view in life than mine.
Yeah.
And I do feel that, we get to grow if we both listen. I like to listen to other points of views, and if they're open to listen to mine, but never to impose my views. And I try not to do that on my films. Now, I have been labeled that my films try to do that, but if they would take the time to actually see the films, they will realize that none of my films have ever attempted to impose any way of thinking, have always propose a theme.
Right. But it would be a theme I would think that you believe is right or true, right? Is that fair to say? Or you
It will
yourself are
be
not sure and you're posing an
no,
idea that
no. It will be a theme that I feel it's universal, uh, in terms of I don't see why would anybody disagree with that theme,
I see.
because
Okay.
it brings us together. For example, in Cabrini, what did she wanted to do? Wanted to take children off the streets and give them a
Yeah.
home.
Yeah.
So yes, I don't feel who that's universally. I think that brings us together. We all, at least publicly, agree with that. Same thing with Fan of Freedom. You know, a guy that wants to rescue children from sexual exploitation.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody that is pro that. In Bella, same thing. You know, a friend that wants to help another friend to give her another option. I don't know if it's interesting because Bella won the Toronto Film Festival, and then somebody labeled the film. But if you look at the movie, he never tells her, you shouldn't do this. You should. He only says, "Hey, you know, I will adopt your baby." You give
Right.
him another option.
Right.
He never said in the movie, "Don't do that. If you do that," he never said that ever.
Yeah.
Now, after the movie came out and it was celebrated by one of the top film festivals in the world, there was somebody outside my team that I don't even know, a newspaper, I think it was the Washington Post, that labeled the film politically. There's nothing I can do about that.
Right.
It's you can label anything. You can label me right now. I can label you right now incorrectly.
Yeah.
It's like if I tell it's like if right now I said, you know, you know what? Um, she does not like Mexicans. She doesn't like Mexicans. Oh, and I just label you. That's very dangerous.
Yeah.
And imagine you actually love Mexicans, but I just decided to label you. You are very anti-Mexican. And then that's the label. And then people don't take the time to get to know you. They just may believe it without even getting to know you. That's very dangerous when you do that to art pieces, because we live in a society that wants to belong to a particular way of thinking. And if that way of thinking goes against of what they want to belong, they won't even take the time to watch the movie. And you have no
Yeah.
idea how many people have like listened to the label, and then I ask him, "Have you seen the movie?" "No, I'm not gonna watch it because they told me." I'm like, well, I am a big believer of individualism. Like, I'm interested of what you think. I'm not interested in what you think based on your neighbor's view.
Yeah.
If somebody sees my films and don't like them because they watch them, I applaud it. I respect that. I'm like, great. Thank you for watching it. I understand you don't like them. But if you didn't like my films just because you read an article, it's very hard for me to respect that. Very hard. It's just like, You should take the time
Yeah.
before you make a choice to watch the work, you know?
Well, Alejandro, isn't it, I was gonna say though, isn't it hard? Like, how do you feel as a director? Because your movies are different than the majority of films. A lot of films now that come out, either families can't go to, right?
Hmm.
Or they're very dark, or they're very gritty. Not saying that they're not saying something true about life. They are. But your films are different in that there is a light to it. There's a redemption to it. Either your character is doing something that, like you said, universally we would be like, that's a good thing. Or you have, something good that's happening in the film and you're praising something that is good. It's very different though than a majority of films. Like, do
Hmm.
you find it hard as a director? You're in a lot of filmmakers who don't make movies like you. So, some films, are going to make millions and be very successful. And Sound of Freedom, kind of against everybody's expectations, kind of hit there for one time. But, for you, with what you want to do with your films, it doesn't seem to be the norm of every director. So, have you ever is that discouraged you at all? Or for you, it's like, I don't really
Hmm.
care about the outcome. I just really want to make good stories.
No, it's very discouraging. Very discouraging. I have to fight I would say every morning. I meditate every morning because, yeah, I wake up discouraged. It's always like fighting against the current,
Yeah,
and
sure.
yeah, it feels really discouraging because, yeah, I'm trying to make everybody should be able to have the same, you know, um, opportunities if you want to explore a particular theme, and more if you can prove, like, before Sound of Freedom, I couldn't prove that there was an audience for my movies, but after Sound of Freedom, I'm like, "Oop, I thought my next films will be easier." And now, even this movie I'm doing right now, it just feels like I'm starting from scratch. It
Yeah.
is, it is, but it's also part of being an independent filmmaker. You know, it's I would love one day to work with the studios, where a big studio comes in and is like, okay, we believe in what you're doing. Here is, how they treated Hitchcock or Spielberg or Tarantino or any of those guys. Here's your $100 million. We're gonna put you in this money. We have all this money to put it on all these theaters, and it's like the support that films like Barbie and Dune and all those big movies. I'm sure it's not easy either, but I have never experienced that. I have been continuing on this in the independent world, which is, there's no room for mistakes. If say climbing El Capitan with no ropes, you fall, that's the end. That's the end of
Hmm.
there's no safety net. So it is definitely a very making movies is already super hard. Making them independently is just, that's another level of hardness. So I'm sure I've never experienced what it is to make a movie with like one of the major studios. So, and I'm not saying it's easy, because making a movie is hard no matter what. But if you have a financial institution as big as any of the big major studios backing you up, I think that will make that a little bit easier. It's like how they say, money is not happiness, but it helps. It's the same thing here. I do feel like, yeah, making movies is really hard, and yeah, having a studio behind it is not going to make a great movie, but it will definitely help to take some of that weight of, if it rains one day, you don't have the money, and then you don't have a movie. Or you finish a movie like Sound of Freedom and you don't have a distributor for 4 years. The movie was on the shelf for 4 years. I finished that movie in 2018, 19. Didn't come out until 2023. So for 4 years, I had a finished movie that was on a shelf. So it's tough, but at the end, I love making movies. I love cinema. I love watching movies, and I love what a movie does to me. And it helps me to suspend reality, and also the movies that actually not only entertain me, but at the same time takes me through a spiritual journey. I like even more.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite films is Schindler's List. I love the way it was shot. I love the way the story was told, and it made me ask myself a lot of deep questions about my own life. So when I saw that movie, I hadn't done a movie yet. I saw it in the theaters. I was really young. I was like maybe 20 years old, I think. And I hadn't done even a short film, but I said, that's the kind of movies I want to make. Movies that begin when the movie ends, that leaves you in a state of reflection. The movie ended and you go and then you start, in a way, meditating or reflecting on any particular issue.
Well, Alejandro, I know you need to go, so thank you so much for your
Yeah.
time. And it's been really cool getting to connect with you and getting to see your vision behind the movies as well.
Well, I want to say one thing. You're very good. Uh, your podcast is going to be great. You ask great questions. To me, a great interview is 100% based on the questions. If they ask you shallow questions, the interview is shallow. If they ask you deep questions, then it takes a deeper path. So I admire what you're doing, and thank you. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to, because I didn't know what I was getting to. But
I'm glad you did.
I, I wish you the best with your podcast, and I think you're up to something, because I do think we need more conversations like this. I like your way of framing the questions, and you want to go a little bit, you want to scratch the superficial surface and go a little bit, and that, to me, that
Yeah,
will help us to connect at a more spiritual level. Well, thank
that's
you.
true.